Hi, I'm Jo Bailey, forensic trained clinical psychologist. Today I'm looking at the case of Lucy Letby. I'm not going to go into the details of the entire case because I think the name Lucy Letby is pretty synonymous by now as one of the most shocking medical crimes in modern British history. If you don't know, she was a neonatal nurse convicted of murdering 7 infants and attempting to kill 6 others. But today I want to look at this more recent evidence that perhaps she was convicted unfairly. Perhaps there was a mistake in her conviction of which she got a life sentence for. So today I want to just look at the case fairly from both sides. I don't really want to form an opinion other than to say, is it possible we got it wrong? Is it possible that Lucy Letby was unfairly convicted, or wrongful conviction? And what this could mean from a forensic psychology point of view, from the legal side of things, and certainly for her future. Imagine being in prison for the rest of your life for a crime you know you did not commit. So in recent months, there have been 14 independent medical experts who've reviewed the deaths of these infants that were connected to Lucy Letby. And their conclusion was the babies likely died from natural causes or systemic medical negligence, not deliberate homicide. Now, this is a stark contrast to the original trial's findings, where prosecutors painted Letby as a calculative serial killer. I've also looked at a couple of Dr. Grande's videos and reviewed those. Grande a year ago did a video on Lucy Letby and he painted her as a serial killer, a cold and callous serial killer with no emotions other than emotions that are activated through trauma, through tragedy, through death. It's a pretty harsh analysis that he put forth. So I'm going to have a look at that. He's also done a more recent video, I think 4 days ago, which I'm going to look at live. I'm not going to watch it first. I'm going to have a look at it with you. I'll probably edit that out so we're not watching the entire video, but we'll have a look whether Dr. Grande has changed his mind in lieu of these new evidence and the conclusions of these medical experts. So what exactly did these experts find? Well, some of the infants had pre-existing conditions that could have explained their deaths. So there was, keep in mind, no evidence of what Lucy Letby did that we would consider absolutely incriminating evidence. There was nothing found in the baby's system that tied her to the case. The air embolisms through the gastrointestinal tubes were decided to be almost implausible, impossible if not implausible. There was no witnesses, no one saw her do anything. There was no medication that was found in her possession. There was nothing that we would think of as really incriminating evidence. A lot of this case was based on circumstantial evidence, and there were 5 different types of evidence that convicted her, and I will talk about that. But ultimately it was the statistical evidence, the fact that she was on duty at every time where these babies' lives were lost. She was the one person who was always present. I mean, on the surface, pretty incriminatory.
And that one area of concern was that a chart shown to the jury showed that she was there for all the murders and attempted murders. However, it's since been claimed that there were other deaths on the unit during the same period when she was not present.
So the interesting thing there with statistics, which is why you should not convict someone based on statistics alone, is because statistics can look different. You can transform statistics, you can manipulate statistics. They don't tell the whole story. Statistics are numbers, they don't tell the story. And statistics seem damning in Lucy's case. So in the period that she worked there between 2015 and 2016, there were at least 10 deaths. But in the years prior to that, it was considered reasonably stable, with the average death between 2 and 4 per year. So we saw at least twice as many babies die whilst Lucy was there. After Lucy Letby was removed from the ward, yes, we look at statistics and we say, well, there was only 1 death after she was taken off the ward. But we also have to look at the story. Statistically, that's accurate. But the story was that they stopped taking these high-risk babies. They reduced the risk after they removed her. So, of course, we're going to see a reduction. And the hospital was under massive scrutiny, under review. So, of course, it's going to improve its clinical practices, which in turn will reduce mortality and morbidity. So we've got to be careful with statistics. They tell us numbers, they don't tell us the story. So the other thing the medical experts found, sorry to digress, so I'll just review. Number one was that there was pre-existing conditions in these babies that passed away, that the air embolism method, which was cited as perhaps the most likely method of murder, could have been a misdiagnosed natural event, and they actually questioned the possibility of that being a plausible way to have killed these children. And the third one, which I think we need to put a lot more emphasis on, is the medical failures, the systemic problems in this hospital, such as incorrect intubation and poor oxygen management, and the hospital already being under review for some pretty serious neglectful practices. When you're a hospital administrator, it's your job. Your job is on the line, literally, to protect the best interests of that hospital. So is it possible that administrators or other people tried to cover up the negligence? And when they saw that Lucy Letby was on shift in each and every incident, she was a fall guy for this? Is it possible? It's possible. So we've got to look at all of this. It raises the question, did the jury convict Lucy Letby based on flawed forensic evidence and circumstantial reasoning? Is that what happened here? So when I answer that question, was Lucy Letby convicted on flawed forensic evidence and circumstantial reasoning and not meeting that evidentiary standard of beyond a reasonable doubt, then I think yes, which is very different from whether I think she did it or didn't do it. I just don't think that standard, that threshold was met in her case. So let's have a look from a forensic psychology standpoint. There are a few issues that we need to consider when we're looking at wrongful convictions. And the first is cognitive bias. So once Letby was labelled as a suspect, every piece of evidence was interpreted through that lens. So we see this in Dr. Grande's video. He makes a lot of cognitive bias, a lot of fundamental attribution errors. He's looking at the case through the lens of her being guilty, and then he goes so far as assuming not only what she did, but what she thought, who she was, and her motives behind a lot of things.
There's this sense that Lucy thrived on frustration, despair, anguish, confusion, and grief. The suffering of others was exciting and fulfilling to her. She just could not get enough of that feeling. No amount of homicidal behavior could satisfy her.
He says these things with a lot of purpose and conviction himself, which is a great example of cognitive bias. You know, cognitive bias can also be seen in things like the handwritten note, which was later labelled the confession note. Now, whether it was a confession note or not, we don't know. There are other alternate explanations. If we just look at it superficially, on the surface, this note does look like she's done something wrong. But is it possible that this was a way she was getting out her emotions, her feelings of being not good enough? Clearly, she had a lot of self-esteem problems. She had a lot of underlying shame and self-criticism. There was a very harsh critic, which a lot of people do. I am an example of that. I'm very harsh on myself. And when you are working in an environment where ultimately little brand new babies are dying around you, if you're not guilty, you are just part of this process and watching this death, that's going to have a massive impact on you. That is going to impact you emotionally. And did she feel like it was because of things she was doing or not doing quite innocently as opposed to homicidal intent? Well, yeah, that's plausible. She might have felt evil. She might have thought it was something she was inevitably doing or not doing that wasn't good enough. And we see that exact kind of terminology when she spoke to a doctor. Let's have a look at that.
And it says here, an exchange between Lucy Letby and another doctor. And it says, Lucy Letby texted to say, sat having a quiet moment and want to cry. The doctor said, poor little thing, and are you okay? Have a cry, you'll feel better. To which she then responded, we lost 2 babies I was caring for, and this happened today. And then the bit that's somewhat highlighted, you can probably just about see at the bottom, says, makes you think I am missing something or good enough, seemingly to question whether or not she's good enough at her job. However, this note obviously went a little bit further than that, because not the bit that's highlighted, I'll come back to that in a moment. The bits that were presented as confession evidence include these. It says, I don't deserve to live, I killed them on purpose.
I'm just going to pause it there because I've seen so many people read that sentence and stop halfway through the sentence. The full sentence isn't, I killed them on purpose. The full sentence is, I killed them on purpose because I'm not good enough to care for them. So I think she feels responsible, and she says she feels horrible. She doesn't deserve to live. The world is better off without her.
Were presented to the jury throughout the trial as confession evidence.
So when we do behavioural analysis, we try to gather baseline data. Everyone acts, speaks, has these individual nuances and does things in their own way. So we can see through those two comparisons between the text message, and this is only two examples, so I wouldn't use that as a baseline, but just to highlight a similarity, is that sense of not being good enough. Not being good enough is seen in both examples. And the word hate, some people have assumed the hate means towards the babies, but I'm getting more the impression from this that this was self-hate. That Lucy maybe she had pre-existing pre-morbid issues of self-esteem, low self-confidence, a very critical voice. A lot of perfectionistic people have a very critical voice. And then when these babies were passing and she was on shift, maybe it was too much for her to deal with. Surely losing a baby, much less multiple babies in your care, is going to make a normal person feel very abnormal. It's going to challenge the best of us. So she might have been struggling with the overwhelming nature of loss and grief, and maybe she was feeling responsible. When emotions take over, we have distortions in our cognitive reasoning. Emotions can impact the way we rationalize our thought process. Now, she might have been overgeneralizing. She might have been personalizing. She may have felt responsible, even though she technically wasn't responsible for the deaths herself. She was part of the care team. She was on shift when these things happened. It's possible that she felt shame, she felt guilt, she felt not good enough. And clearly she did feel that because she's expressed that. The problem is, do we then go from her not feeling good enough and feeling self-hate to saying that this note is proof she killed the babies? And I guess that is the role of the court system, the role of the jury, to make that decision. It's equally plausible that she did have something to do with it, but we need more than theories. We need more than speculation and statistics. So was the note a confession or the desperate thoughts of an innocent person just trying to process their emotions, overwhelmed by guilt or things that were happening that were out of her control? The second is media influence. So the press played a massive role in this case, and public opinion before and during the trial was rife. People had very passionate, very strong opinions on everything. And you've got the media in the background, very subtly, at other times very overtly guiding the narrative, guiding the rhetoric behind this. Headlines were branding her a monster, a killer nurse. You know, when we've got these kind of information out there, then it taints our opinion. Does it taint a jury's opinion? I mean, they're not meant to be looking at all of this stuff, but of course they hear it. It became almost impossible for the jury to remain unbiased. Psychological studies have shown that pre-trial publicity greatly and drastically impacts jury verdicts. So we know this is a fact. It's a phenomenon that exists and we know it happens. So was there influence? Absolutely there was. And the third thing we look at in these wrongful conviction cases is systemic pressures. The hospital where these deaths occurred had already been under scrutiny for significant medical failure. Could it be that the hospital administrators were eager to avoid accountability and they had found a very convenient scapegoat in Lucy? They wanted to protect their own jobs, the hospital interests. It wouldn't be the first time an institution has deflected blame onto an individual to protect their own interests. I mean, I'm not saying these things happen, but this is what criminal court is about. It's looking at all the hypotheses, all the theories, all the possibilities, and seeing if one theory stands above and beyond the others without any kind of reasonable doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt. And there's just so many complexities, so many possibilities, and a lack of real substantial evidence here. This case really relied on circumstantial and statistical evidence. And is that enough to take someone's life from them, to put them in jail for the rest of their life? I would say not. I think it would be a very dangerous thing to do that. We can't convict on emotion. We can't convict on circumstantial reasoning. It just is not the way, well, in this case it was the way, but it should not be the way that a criminal court operates. Wrongful convictions destroy lives, and if Letby is innocent, she's living a nightmare. But beyond her personal suffering, this case has broader implications. It calls into question the reliability of medical forensics in criminal cases. It exposes potential institutional cover-ups that cost people their freedom. And it forces us to rethink how we handle high-profile cases where media narratives shape legal outcomes. So what happens next? Will Lucy be able to have her case retrialed? Well, she's already had 2 appeals rejected. So the only way she can get back into the appeals court is through the Criminal Cases Review Commission. So this is the commission that deals with miscarriages, gross miscarriages of injustice, and they have the power to then be able to redirect her case back to the appeals court. That's the only way. Now, will this information from the 14 medical experts who have, mind you, 500 years of combined experience. So I think we need to consider their testimony. I think we need to revisit the potential that there was negligence, there was suboptimal care in the hospital, that this note that Lucy wrote has other meanings, which we've explored in this video. And I think we need to consider the standard, the evidentiary standard of beyond a reasonable doubt, and whether that was upheld or not. We just should not be able to convict people on suspicion or on even a preponderance of the evidence. We need to know that the evidence we have is objective, substantial, not circumstantial, not statistics, because statistics aren't foolproof. There's just so much in this case. Dr. Grande is right when he says it's complex and there's information everywhere. So does that not in itself suggest this needs to be reviewed? I would think it does. I'd love to hear what you think about this case. Are you someone who thinks Lucy is where she belongs? Are you someone who thinks she's innocent? Or are you like me and think that, there possibly was a miscarriage of justice, at least in the way that this trial proceeded, and that we need to relook at all the evidence again? And that's where I sit with this. I really do not know one way or another whether I feel she's guilty or not, but I certainly think in honour of our forensic criminal justice system, this needs another look. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Have a happy, peace-filled day. Bye for now.